We are back here with the Season 2 finale review of The Mandalorian, Season 2, Episode 8, Chapter 16, The Rescue. Myself, Graham Jason Matthews, and the Doc, Chris Mueller, back, breaking it all down. There's so much to talk about here. Chris, welcome back, and where do we even start with this episode?
I mean, I guess we just start at the beginning, because the only good way to cover this one is to go in order, I think.
Definitely. So before we get into the episode itself, I gotta ask, so I watched the episode yesterday afternoon, and I knew this was going to be a big episode. The entire season's been awesome. We'll get into the overall season, our thoughts on how it compared to Season 1 at the end of this review. So the episodes are uploaded every Friday morning at 3 a.m. Eastern Time to your time. It's supposed to be midnight over on the West Coast. So I think a lot of people on the West Coast watch them when they come out. 3 a.m. for me is just too late to be watching this show. So I just waited until the next day and I was busy. So I knew it was going to be a big episode. I waited while I was waiting to watch the episode, I stayed off of social media for the most part. I think I saw you post something, but anything Mandalorian related, I try to stay as far away from it as possible because I did not want to be spoiled for this episode. So before you finally watched it, Chris, were you spoiled for anything that happened on the episode itself?
No, because I have a weird sleep schedule. I was up when it dropped, so I watched immediately because I know it's you can't avoid spoilers these days if you don't watch it right away or just avoid social media, and literally as soon as the episode was over, I jumped on Twitter and just posted a quick thing without any spoilers, and all I was seeing was people like, oh my god, it's Luke Skywalker, oh my god, blah blah blah, like god, guys, give it until noon. Yeah. Just let people wake up and at least give them the opportunity. And we got to remember that most people work too, so not everybody's going to even watch it until 5 at night, whatever. So I knew it was going to be bad, but so many people were pissed off because the first thing they saw when they woke up was Luke Skywalker's epic return. You know?
Yeah, no, I don't understand, because when the Avengers movies came out, Infinity War, Endgame specifically, I know they had the whole campaign, don't spoil the Endgame. We talked about this when we reviewed the movie a couple of months ago with Nick. But is it a Star Wars versus Marvel thing? Or I feel like when Marvel stuff is released, at least as far as I have seen anyway, there aren't any spoilers for anything before I go see the movies. And sometimes I don't see the movies until the second, third, fourth day that they're out. The Star Wars stuff, and I've said this, I don't know if I've told you this before, but when Force Awakens came out, actually almost 5 years ago from yesterday's when that movie was released, the morning of, I think I had posted something on my Facebook or Twitter or whatever, saying that night I was going to see the movie. And of course, by that point, some people had already seen it on the Thursday night, depending on where you are, and someone just responded with a fucking meme saying that Han Solo died, and I'm like, come on, man, do you gotta spoil that? Don't be an asshole. Is it a Star Wars versus Marvel thing? I don't get it.
It's a dick move. I don't think it's Star Wars versus Marvel. I think it's just shitty fans versus respectable fans. I mean, it's and I think the attitude towards spoiling movies is different than TV shows, because with TV shows, people think everyone has the chance to see it at the same time, so at least, a lot of people will. With movies, I think people understand, or at least a lot of people do, give people at least the first weekend, and then maybe start talking about it, but I don't know. I'm one of those people, I try to avoid posting. I know people are going to see it anyway, but I personally don't want to be the person to spoil something like that. So,
100%,
yeah, I avoid posting anything too big before a reasonable amount of time has passed. I still don't think I've actually said anything about Luke Skywalker on Twitter.
Exactly, yeah. So we're recording this on Saturday. I'm putting this up on Monday. I think Monday is a respectable time. I think... Because I was very confused when, a couple of weeks ago, when they had Sasha Banks on the show for the first time, Casca Reeves, I was very confused why WWE didn't acknowledge the fact that she was on the episode. Like, even SmackDown that night, you would think, okay, they would bring it up. They didn't. It took them 3 days to acknowledge it. And I feel like, I don't know if Star Wars told them or whoever, or if it was a WWE move. They waited until Monday to acknowledge that she was on the show. I feel like Monday's a respectable time to be like, okay, let's discuss this openly. Just because, like you said, even a TV show thing, I feel like if it's a show that airs at a certain time, like every week, for Raw, for example, if Raw airs and we're posting about it, by that point, it airs at the same time every week. I think that's okay to, put out spoilers or whatever happened by the time it airs. For a streaming service show, I think it's different. Like you said, people work, people are busy, especially now with Christmas coming up. Not everyone's going to stay up for when the show drops early in the morning, or even at 10 a.m., depending on where you are and what time zone you're in. Just putting that shit up immediately is so shitty. So I'm so glad that I stayed away from spoilers. I didn't have that spoiled for me because it was such a cool moment. We'll get to why that moment, you said the Luke thing, we already talked about it, gave me goosebumps. We'll get to that later on. But we'll start from the beginning here. And one of our theories for the last couple of weeks was that this episode would have an Avengers-esque team-up. Now, we didn't get everyone on this episode. We did have Boba Fett already. I'm going to ask you again, Kirsten. I know I've asked you multiple times. What was the name of the woman with Boba Fett?
Fennec Shand.
Fennec Shand, okay. She was on the episode, of course, again. We did get the return of Bo-Katan and Sasha's character, which was interesting, because the other two Mandalorian were not with Bo-Katan, just Sasha, Casca Reeves, which was cool. So we got them. Obviously, Gina Carano's character, Cara Dune. We did not get Grief Karga, which was not disappointing, but I thought we were going to get him. We did not get Cobb Vanth from the first episode of the second season, Timothy Olyphant's character. But other than that, we had a pretty hefty crew of people here going into Moff Gideon's crew to rescue Baby Yoda, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, I was glad that they went and got Bo-Katan and Casca Reeves to join the fight, because that made for some entertaining scenes.
Can we please talk about the Boba Fett Sasha Banks mini match that we got there in the bar, whatever it was? How cool is that? And the fact that we got, as wrestling fans, that we got a DDT from Sasha Banks and fucking Boba Fett. I thought that was awesome.
A jetpack assisted tornado DDT, no less. But,
to be specific, yeah.
That was pretty awesome, and I do like, because there was, I believe in the Clone Wars cartoon, there was a couple of scenes that showed, what's his face, Boba Fett, like, having issues with Mandalorians, or maybe that was from a comic book, I can't remember, but, so, like, they know who he is, and they feel like he's a disgrace to the Mandalorian name, because he never took the creed, but he wears the armor.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we got to see a little bit of that, like, oh, this was my father's armor, and she goes, don't you mean your donor, because you're a clone? Like, so obviously there's some resentment there. Plus, on top of that, so many of those clones were used to commit Order 66. So, like, his face and his voice are very recognizable to anybody who is around during the Big Purge, and I can imagine that that's not going to be the last time that comes up.
So that's what I was curious about, because Casca had said, oh, I've heard your voice a million times before. Was it Boba's voice, Jango's voice, whatever, that was instituted into all the clones for Order 66? I thought it was a different voice. Or was it indeed Boba's same voice?
Well, in the Clone Wars stuff, they're all based on Jango Fett, which is the same actor, Tamora Morrison. So it was really his voice used for every clone.
Gotcha, okay.
Like in the original prequel trilogy with, episodes 1 through 3, anytime there's a clone on screen, it's Tamora Morrison doing the voiceover.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember if he did it for the cartoons or not, too. I think maybe he did it for some, but yeah, so his voice definitely is going to be memorable to certain people. What I found
go ahead, Chris.
Funny.
Yeah.
So what I found a little weird was they specifically have Boba Fett, like, he's playing the guy, I mean, we'll get to this later, but he's the one chasing the ship that they're in, that they're going to use to infiltrate, the heavy cruiser that
Yep.
Gideon's on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then once the plan is kind of complete, he takes off. And then at the end, when Luke shows up, I'm like, oh, that's why they had him take off, because if Luke showed up and saw Boba Fett, he would have sliced him in half.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I'm like, oh, wait, I was waiting for the epic face-off. Then I realized, oh, wait, he's not there. And then I'm thinking, I thought, okay, so that's the last time that they'll see each other, that Boba Fett kind of helping Mando, that was kind of his receipt and whatever, helping him get the kid, was by kind of helping him get into the ship, and then riding off into the sunset, and then leading to the post-credit scene, which we'll get to a little bit later on. But he had to have gone back to pick up Fennec Shan, because obviously she was seen in that post-credit scene too, and obviously Luke's gone by the time he would come back. So yeah, I thought that was pretty funny as well.
I mean, it was a nice little way for them to write around that, because had they had Luke walk in and just ignore Boba Fett's presence, had he been on the bridge, it wouldn't have made any sense, and people would have focused on that and gotten mad. So that was a smart bit of writing where they're like, okay, well, we need a reason for Boba Fett not to be there. How about he's the guy chasing in the ship to make it look like they're getting it? Like, it was, I liked that detail, because so many other writers, I think, would have overlooked that, because Luke would remember Boba Fett.
Exactly. So I was wondering too, and I hadn't seen the movie in a while. Was it Luke that caused Boba's jetpack to malfunction, or was that Han Solo?
It was either Han or Lando.
Oh, okay.
Lando
So
was on that little thing too. Somebody was swinging something and just hit the jetpack, and he went flying into the side of the sail barge. But yeah, it was like, even though Boba Fett's not a major character in those original movies, he's so iconic and memorable that as soon as Luke saw him, he would have drawn his lightsaber again. But you never know. This is very clearly a different, more evolved Luke than those movies, and I think that's why this affected people so much, because it's the first time we got to see Luke at the height of his Jedi power. Like, the way he's just slicing through those dark troopers, we never got to see anything like that from Luke in the original movies.
100%, and by the time we finally see him again in Force Awakens, he's just too old. So yeah, no, definitely, this is like prime Luke right here. And I mean, again, we'll jump all over the place here, because I got to acknowledge this now while we're on the subject of Luke. Did that scene when he just shows up, and obviously you see the green saber, and well before he takes his hood off, it's Luke Skywalker just based off the color of the saber. Did that scene give you Rogue One, Darth Vader vibes to you, or was that just me?
Well, I know a lot of people made that comparison, and there's even side by side of the scenes like looking very similar, but that didn't immediately pop into my head, because I was still, like, at that point, I was still wondering if they were really going to make it Luke, because I didn't think they'd have the balls to do it. And I was like trying to focus in on the face, like, is that somebody else, or is it another alien species I can recognize? Like, for a split second, because Ezra Bridger's lightsaber in Rebels was green at the end too, so I'm like, are they bringing in Ezra? But Ezra never wore black cloaks like that, so it would have been a weird thing. But yeah, as soon as he took off the thing, I'm like, wow, they really did it. And I'm glad that at least the people who were like marking out for this scene still acknowledge that the CGI was not the greatest.
Specifically, so specifically when he talked, it wasn't great. You could see his mouth would look weird,
because it's them pasting Mark Hamill's face on a different actor, because clearly they got a body double.
Yep, definitely.
And it never looks natural. It didn't look natural for Leia. It didn't look natural for Moff Gideon in Rogue One.
Yeah.
The only reason Marvel has been able to do it so well is because they keep pasting the same actors' faces on the same actor's body and just making everything look younger. And when you do it this way, it looks more like an internet deep fake. So
it really did, yeah.
And what's funny was, I'll bet you money that within a month, somebody out there will make a scene that looks better than this using simple internet deepfake technology.
Yeah, it didn't bother me, but it was definitely noticeable. Like, I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, like you said, is this like a look-alike? Because you could obviously tell it's Luke, but I'm like, just looking at the mouth and stuff, I'm like, oh, did they find someone who looked like him to whatever? But obviously they did the technology, and it just didn't look great. I think it's just because the longer that scene went on, and he was there for a couple of minutes, the worse that it looked. Do you think they got the same voice? Because it didn't sound like Mark Hamill.
It was Mark Hamill, but that's, like, I don't know. Mark Hamill's a very talented voice actor, so I don't know if he just made his voice sound younger or if they did something to auto-tune it to make it sound like he did back when Return of the Jedi came out. But it is him. He is credited. It is his voice. They did do facial capture for him and then overlay it on the guy. So he did participate, but I don't know if there's some kind of effect on it or if he's just able to make himself sound that young again. Because one of my favorite examples is Billy West from Futurama, who does Fry. He always said that Fry is just him at 25 years old. He's like, I just make myself sound how I think I sounded back when I was younger, which is like a little nasally, a lot more annoyed at everything. And funny. He's like, and the funny thing about that is because that's basically his real voice, almost nobody can do a Fry impression because doing an impression of somebody's real voice is hard. But doing Bugs Bunny is easy because Bugs Bunny sounds weird.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah, that's a good point.
So with Mark Hamill, like, I could tell that was absolutely his voice. It's just whether or not they did anything digitally to make him sound younger, I'm not 100% sure. And, you know, we'll probably get some making of documentary that tells us all about it.
Yeah, probably on the sooner side, I would imagine. Because didn't they already do, not a making of Mandalorian, didn't they already do like a miniseries on Disney Plus about the making of like season 1 or something like that? I thought I had seen something along those lines.
They might have. I didn't watch it if they did.
Yeah, and I heard, I thought it was Mandalorian. I don't know. I'd have to go back and check. It was like the making of Mandalore or something along those lines. It was what it was called. But no, that whole scene was great because especially when it looks like they're in dire straits, the ship flies in, the X-Wing flies in, and they ask, oh, please state your name or whatever, and you don't hear anything. So you know shit's about to go you know shit's about to go down. Before you see the green saber, did you have, I mean, you said Ezra when you see the green saber, but before you see the saber itself, did you have any other last-minute predictions for who that could have been? Because I was selfishly, I mean, I was very happy it was Luke, and I know this wouldn't have made any sense within the context of this story, I guess, even though we talked about it last week. Maybe I was hoping we may have seen, like, the purple saber for Mace Windu. I think by this point, I don't know if that would have worked as well. Maybe they'll get to that at another point. I don't know. But I think, but the thing is that Luke obviously wasn't the one who saved Baby Yoda from, the Order 66, the Jedi Temple stuff, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, he wasn't alive yet.
Exactly. So they never explained that, which they didn't need to. They're not going to tie up every loose end because obviously they want you to watch the next season. Did you have any other last-minute predictions for who that person could have been? Not the person who saved Baby Yoda, but when Luke showed up here. Or did you figure it was Luke when you saw the ship?
Well, when I saw the X-Wing, the first thing that jumped into my mind was like, are they really going to do Luke Skywalker? Because Luke Skywalker's X-Wing doesn't stick out a lot, but it is an iconic ship. He's Red 5. And so when they asked him to identify himself, in the back of my head, I'm like, God damn, I really hope he says Red 5, because that would just be so funny. Yeah. But he didn't. But as soon as he ignited the lightsaber, I couldn't really see the hilt too much, but I'm like, okay, so it's either Ezra or Luke, because they're the only, like, really iconic green lightsaber users that are still kicking around at this point.
Yeah.
But I feel like they're going to save Ezra for the Ahsoka show.
Yeah, so that's completely separate, as we already established that she's going to have her own show coming up. And I thought it was really cool as well, and again, we're bouncing all over the place here, that what they didn't announce as part of the Disney Investor Day over a week ago was the Boba Fett show. So we found out from the post-credit scene that he's getting his own, I thought it might have been a movie, but it's obviously going to be a show, coming December 2021. He showed up at Jabba's palace, killing Bib Fortuna, or Bib Fortuna, I forgot how you pronounce his name, but he kills him.
You got it,
Fortuna, okay, so he kills him, takes the throne with the woman by his side, and just a great moment. It was a very short post-credit scene. We didn't have any post-credit scenes in Mandalorian prior to this point, so someone kind of tipped me off, hey, watch it, didn't tell me what it was, which I thought was really fucking cool, called The Book of Boba Fett. So, what were your thoughts on that, and what that show might entail? Are we going to finally find out how he escaped from the Sarlacc pit? What do you think? What's going to go on with that?
Well, I've seen some speculation that might just be Mandalorian season 3's subtitle. Like, some people seem to think that it might not be a separate show because it wasn't announced.
Okay.
So I don't know. I personally don't want them to over bloat the schedule with TV shows, but at the same time, I would love a show about Boba Fett. I don't want it to be a prequel though. Like, I'm sick of prequels where you know what happens to the main character at the end.
Yeah.
So I would rather see a continuation of what we saw at the end here, which is him taking over the criminal underworld. Because Boba Fett's not necessarily a villain, but he's not a good guy either. Mm-hmm. So he sees an opportunity to go get revenge a little bit on the people he thinks left him for dead, which is partially true, but they were dealing with Luke and Han and all the other people fighting him, so it's not like they were too worried about getting Boba out of the Sarlacc pit. Mm-hmm. But to see him come in and just lay waste to everybody in the palace and then take over, it's a very interesting idea, because for one thing, Boba Fett is clearly no longer running the criminal underworld by the time the sequel trilogy came out.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm wondering if maybe the show will chronicle his downfall. Maybe he'll die at the end. Who knows?
Yeah. No, I'm curious. I'm very curious, and I think he's come across great in the last couple of episodes that we've seen him in of The Mandalorian, so I'm very excited. If it is his own show, I don't think it's going to be a third season of Mandalorian. It might, but it sounds like The Mandalorian has come out in October, November, the last couple of years, where December isn't too far off, but it sounds like they might do the third season of Mandalorian next fall, and then do the Boba Fett show right after. That would be my guess, in that what we saw from him in The Mandalorian was the last that we'll see of him in that show. So they might explain how he got out of the Sarlacc pit, but I completely agree with you. I want to see what happens to him from this point forward. Connor, my friend who was actually here on the show a couple of weeks ago, texted me after the episode aired yesterday and told me that the Bib Fortuna character, I guess, was played by, I didn't see a lot of people talking about this when I looked it up after he told me, was played by a guy named Matt Wood, who voiced General Grievous in the Clone Wars show, I think it was, or whatever it was. I think, yeah, the Clone Wars show that he was in, which I did not know, because I was wondering if it was the same guy from the original movies, but obviously, I don't know if that guy's still alive or not.
No, I had no idea. Like I said, I haven't watched all of Clone Wars. I didn't even know it's a big part of it. Yeah. I assumed he was in it a little bit, but yeah, that's kind of cool. I mean, Star Wars, that's what's nice about it, is you can take an actor that's been prominent like that and then just stick him in makeup or have him do a voice role. Like, Mark Hamill has played a bunch of different people in the
he has
movies so far, and shows. Yeah. He said, like, in what is it, The Last Jedi, when they go to the casino planet, he's the little alien sticking coins in BB-8. Like, that is Mark Hamill doing those weird drunk noises. Mm-hmm. So it's cool that they're able to take people who've been in the Star Wars universe, whether it be a big or a small role, and put them in something else and you don't even notice.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty cool. They like to recycle a lot of their stars, which I think is awesome. Again, there was so much that happened on this episode. I'm trying to hit upon everything and remember it all. I'm looking at my notes here, too, but we got to talk about the Dark Saber, because obviously that was a big part of the episode, too. That was the whole reason why Bo-Katan went with Mando to go retrieve Baby Yoda, because obviously she cares about Baby Yoda, but at the same time, she also wanted the Dark Saber. That's the whole reason why she wanted to go after Moff Gideon. So, ultimately, she does not get it, because we come to find out, which they did not reveal previously, and she makes it very well known that she wants to be the one to have Moff surrender to her and not anyone else. So I thought that was weird, and it end up making sense by the time we found out that the Dark Saber can only be won in battle, and that he can't just forfeit it. He has to be beaten by Bo-Katan for it. So they make a big deal about that after he apprehends Moff Gideon. And then before they can kind of really settle that storyline, before they can kind of really get to that, that's when the Dark Trooper showed up and then the Luke cameo happened, blah, blah, blah. What do you expect to come out of that? Do you think that's going to be the I don't know if that's really something you can make a third season about. Is that something you think they'll explain in the first episode of the next season or in their own show? What do you think is going to go on with that?
I'm not sure, because she didn't win the Dark Saber in combat to begin with. In Star Wars Rebels, the character Sabine finds it, and then when she realizes the kind of responsibility that comes with owning it, she gives it to Bo. And at first, Bo does refuse it, saying, like, no, it has to be won this way, blah, 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 blah. But eventually, all of the heads of the different clans on Mandalore, like, pledge their allegiance to her, so she chooses to accept it that way. So I'm not sure why she's making such a big deal out of it now. Maybe she doesn't want to have it handed to her a second time. Maybe she has too much pride for that. But I don't know what their plan is. I loved the fact that they brought back the Beskar spear and had a spear versus Dark Saber fight in the hallway. And the fact that Moff Gideon lost that fight tells me that, because obviously Mando hasn't used the spear a bunch.
Yeah.
So the fact that he was able to best Gideon with it obviously means he's a good fighter, but it also means Gideon's more of a strategist than a fighter himself.
He lost that fight pretty quickly.
And he tried to get the jump on Mando by pretending he was just going to let him take the baby and then attack him from behind.
Exactly, yeah.
And I also don't know if he really was aware of how strong the Beskar was, because why would you swing it right at the guy's jetpack if you know it's not going to go through it? Like,
yeah.
There's some soft spots on that armor. Like, it doesn't cover every inch of his body. You think he would have tried to stab him in the side or in the shoulder underneath the... Like, so that tells me that Gideon was never intended to be, like, a badass fighter. He's more of the guy behind the scenes, like Grand Moff Tarkin, who just pulls the strings and has other people do his dirty work for him.
Yeah, no, I thought he was an awesome part of this episode. He's come across really well this entire season, but I thought he played a great role here. And like you said, he's definitely more of a strategist than he is a fighter, and that became pretty clear because I thought the fight would either culminate in one of them dying, because one thing I did see on Twitter before I saw the episode that I kind of scrolled over so I didn't see any more of it, people were saying that they were crying from the Mandalorian season finale. I thought that was because somebody died. I thought it was because Mando died or Baby Yoda died. And we've talked about this before, that there was a lot of talk from people, not people within the show, but like fans, speculating, oh, Mando's going to die, and that the show might become the Bo-Katan show or the Boba Fett show. I was very worried that was going to happen, so honestly, that was my expectation when I saw that scene, that Moff Gideon was going to kill him, and then something was going to happen from there. But I'm very happy that was not the direction they ended up going in, because as we previously established, I think that would have been incredibly dumb to kill off either one of those characters at this point.
Oh yeah, it would have been a big mistake. I'm glad that nobody important really died, actually, but yeah, I'm really curious to see what they do going forward, because he pledged to help her get Mandalore back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think season 3 is going to be about that, whether he's wielding the Dark Saber or she is at that point. That'll be interesting to see, but they didn't settle that at the end of this, so that's a dangling thread that they're going to have to pick up.
Do you think they're going to pick up right where they left off here, or do you think there might be a time jump, because now that Baby Yoda's not really in the picture, presumably, that we can kind of go 5-10 years into the future if they wanted to?
They could. I don't think they're going to, though, because during the call, one of the things I think Kathleen Kennedy mentioned was all these shows that take place in the same period will eventually lead up to a big crossover event, kind of like what they did with the Defenders on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
So at some point, the Rangers of the New Republic, the Ahsoka show, the Mandalorian, and maybe the Boba Fett show will all sort of produce either a movie or a limited series that brings all those characters together, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't know when the plan for that is. Like, that could be a few years down the line. They have to obviously establish all these other characters and give them their own stories first.
Yeah, that sounds like it's going to be a while. It sounds like an Avengers type thing where it's like, all right, we'll do all these movies. Like with the first Avengers movie, they had Iron Man, Iron Man 2, Hulk, Captain America, blah, 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 before they finally had the first Avengers movie 4 or 5 years later. So I assume it's going to be one of those type of things. But things work differently with shows. It could be 3 years down the road for all we know. But yeah, I'm very, very curious to see what they do. Did you like the fact that I think they really brought the Baby Yoda story to a close very nicely? Because we've said this before, where not every season, not every episode is going to be about saving Baby Yoda, him getting kidnapped, going on after her. I mean, you can't be doing that every single season, so I'm sure there are going to be people who are sad that we're not getting Baby Yoda anymore, but I think that was probably the best way to do it, because now they can always revisit it. And he did say that he would see him again, so I think the way they closed that chapter, with him going off with Luke, and they can always revisit the Luke CGI thing in the future, and hopefully by that point the CGI is a little better than it looked here. But I think the way they closed that chapter out was almost perfect.
Yeah, that was good. The only thing is, like, so somebody, I think it was Jon Favreau, tweeted out, like, no, Baby Yoda did not die at the temple when Kylo Ren killed everybody. So at some point, either Baby Yoda reunites with Mando and leaves the Jedi Temple, or maybe they're just implying that he graduated before that and went off on his own. But I hope that they do address that at some point, like, because it's Disney. They're not going to let a merchandising juggernaut like Baby Yoda just fade away. He'll be in season 3 somehow.
Yeah.
Even if it's just one episode at the end where Mando goes to visit him on Father's Day or some bullshit.
Maybe have you seen Monsters, Inc. before or no?
No.
Oh man, I was gonna say, because at the end of that movie they have that girl Boo that Sully, the main monster, looks after, the human girl, and then like the very last scene of the movie is like maybe like 6 months to a year later, he goes to visit her again, and she's supposed to be all grown up, but we don't see her. I was gonna say maybe they can like recreate that with Baby Yoda, where like you hear him or something, but we don't actually see him grown up. Or do you think they'll do like a teenage Yoda thing, like with Baby Groot when they had him as teenage Groot in the Avengers Infinity War movie?
Maybe. I mean, the fact that he still looks like a baby at 50 means he's aging super slowly. So yeah. I don't want them to age him up all of a sudden out of nowhere in 1 year, but it would be kind of funny to see them flash forward like 15, 20 years or whatever, and you get to see him looking a little more like Yoda, but not so old.
Yeah, no, I agree. I guess we'll see where they go with it. And I thought it was cool we got an R2d2 cameo as well. Can't forget about that. In addition to Luke, he popped up right alongside him.
Yeah, and a lot of people had thoughts on that too, because the way R2 reacted, he's either excited because he's seeing another person that looks like Yoda, and R2 and Yoda had some funny scenes together, or he knows Grogu from the Jedi Temple and recognized him.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I was going to say, because that reaction was drawn out a little bit, and they don't do stuff for no reason. So, that's a good theory, and they obviously left it open-ended, so they'll go in whatever direction they want to. Very curious to see what happens with that. I had another question from, I don't remember what it was about, though. R2D2, you mentioned Baby Yoda, in terms of, like, the characters. I don't remember what I was going to ask you. But yeah, I'm very, Din Djarin. So I liked how they kind of closed up that chapter as well, because we've seen throughout this entire season, including season 1, he doesn't take his mask off all that often. We talked about it in the last review. The only other time we'd seen him without his mask on was the season finale for season 1, and then the last episode. So he finally takes it off here, and then I completely forgot. That was actually the first time that Baby Yoda has seen him without his mask on. So I thought that was an amazing moment, and I don't know if that was what brought people to tears, or it was the Luke thing. I don't really know what people were referring to as far as that goes. Probably the Luke Skywalker return. But I thought that was an awesome moment where he finally realized, I don't need the mask on all the time. Bo-Katan, those guys, they don't have their mask on. I don't need mine on constantly. And we actually got to see some real emotion from him, and he does such a great job. And, you've said before, he's not the one under the mask all the time. He just kind of does the voice. But the way the Mando character comes across, even with the mask on, you can feel... he does a good job with his mannerisms, where we don't have to see his face to feel those feelings, if that makes sense. And we finally got to see that here when he finally took off his mask to show Baby Yoda. I thought that made also for another great moment.
Yeah, and I keep reading all these reports that say Pedro Pascal might not be with the show anymore, but it seems like those are false rumors according to
I
some
heard about
people.
that, yeah.
So I don't know what's going on with that, but I did think that was an interesting decision for him to take off the mask in front of everybody.
Yeah.
So I feel like that is a sign that he's starting to loosen up on some of that stuff. But what's funny is, like, Bo-Katan mocks him for being so willing to follow that rule, but then she refuses to take the Dark Saber from him when he offers it. It's like, well, you're just as uptight about the rules as he is then, aren't you? Like,
yeah, exactly.
You're more similar than anybody would probably think. And I read an interesting thing that was like, I can't remember who posted it, but somebody was like, it's pretty obvious they're setting up Bo-Katan and Din Djarin to be a love story. Like, they're starting out with kind of a little bit of a rocky relationship, and now they have this, like, literal thing between them.
Yeah.
And, it's going to come to a boiling point, and you're probably going to have one of those scenes where they clank masks trying to kiss and then realize they still have their masks on.
Maybe, but I what I like about Mandalorian is that we don't have any of that. I feel like the Kylo Ren, Rey love thing at the end of the last movie was incredibly forced. I don't know, that felt like it was something they just threw in there because the directors changed from movie to movie.
Yeah, that wasn't earned at all. Like,
that was so random.
None of the previous movies made it seem like they loved each other in any way. And that kiss was super weird to me, but at the same time I understand why they felt like symbolically it might look cool, but the movies didn't do enough to build up that tension.
No.
And there wasn't enough scenes between them to establish that strong of a connect. Like, her saving him with the Force powers should have been enough.
Yeah. I don't know.
But, it's Disney. They wanted to make some section of the fans happy, and it ended up pissing off a different section, which every decision seems to. But I think with The Mandalorian, the reason so many people were emotional about it was, I think it was three things. One, it was Luke's big scene, because this show has now officially taken two of the original trilogy characters and given them their most badass scenes. They did 100%. It with Boba Fett, and they've done it with Luke now. Mm-hmm. And Ahsoka being portrayed so well in live action made a lot of people happy as well. But then there's the Baby Yoda thing at the end, like you were saying with Din. That was a very emotional scene. But I think the third reason people were so emotional is, like, they just keep sticking the landing with Mandalorian. Like, they haven't. I know that some people didn't like the Frog Lady episode. Some people thought the Bill Burr episode was a little too much filler. But at the same time, I don't think there's been a single episode where people are like, this was bad.
Yeah.
Everybody likes all the episodes to some degree. Like, the biggest complaints people have are minor
100%.
In the grand scheme of things. So I think this show has reinvigorated a lot of people's excitement for Star Wars, because it has just the right amount of fan service from the old stuff while bringing in all of its own stuff as well.
Yeah, I love that. And we were talking, several reviews ago, I forgot what episode it was exactly, and how they shouldn't, I think it was the M count when we were talking about Snoke maybe being incorporated, and this is how they explain it, blah, blah, blah. How this should not become the Skywalker show. This should not become a story of Jedi and blah, blah, blah. They got that over with on this episode, throughout this entire season, because they teased several episodes ago, that, he needs to bring it back to the Jedi, and they did that. Baby Yoda, that is, Grogu, and they did, and now they can move on, and I assume they won't probably do it again. If they do, I assume they'll do right by it. But it seems like they've built up enough goodwill with the audience between the last two seasons, and I like the first season, but I feel like the second season really blew that one out of the water in terms of characters they brought back, cool moments, making everything make sense, and also planting the seeds for many other things to come in the coming seasons and other shows and just everything else. So I feel like anything they do at this point, I have enough faith that they're going to do right by it, which is what I could not say for the movies, at least when it came to the latter two in the last couple of years.
See, I think the key here is Favreau and Filoni together, because Dave Filoni being a part of Star Wars for so long means not only does he have the knowledge and the passion, but he knows exactly what fans want and what they don't want based off of his previous successes and failures.
Yeah.
But then with Favreau is like, he's the perfect guy for these big movies because he works well with the studios, but he also knows how to make a movie that's going to make the hardcore fans happy without alienating the newcomers.
Definitely.
So you could start watching Mandalorian having never seen any Star Wars stuff before, and you could appreciate it. You're not going to appreciate all the deep Easter eggs, but you're still going to like the show because it's so well done.
Yeah, definitely.
And you don't get that with a lot of these big franchises. Like, you can't go in to Avengers Infinity War without having seen some of the previous stuff. Like, and I don't know, like, I just feel like The Mandalorian, at this point, I'm willing to say that, like, it's my favorite thing in Star Wars. Like, it's surpassed all of the movies for me. And it's gotten to a point where, like, I'll be genuinely sad when they announce that this show is over.
Yeah,
unless it just goes drastically downhill. Like, it's one of the few things that I've been excited about in 2020 is this show coming back, and then waiting like the anticipation for each episode. Like, I know people love to binge stuff, but I think there was a few years there where people kind of started to realize, like, you know, if we space this stuff out, people are going to be talking about it for longer. Because Stranger Things, people weren't even talking about season 3 a week after it came out because everybody watched it right away and was like, oh, this was cool, this sucked. All right, what's next? Like,
yeah, there's just a lot to digest there.
Yeah, and 8 weeks for an entire season isn't a very long time, but it's long enough to keep it in the zeitgeist, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, people are still talking about it right now like it just aired. I mean, the episode's been up for, what, close to 36 hours now?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's crazy. Like, I got texts from 3 different people specifically. So I have a friend down in Florida who, she runs a bar. So she ends up getting home at like 2, 3 in the morning most nights anyway. So she sent me a message at like 3:30 in the morning being like, well, I didn't expect to end my night crying over Baby Yoda, but here we are.
Oh, God. That's great.
And then my friend, Billy, he was going to come on the podcast, and I think he said he wanted to do the holiday special one when we do that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, in the next week or so, if you still want to do that, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I sent him a text in the morning at like, I knew he wakes up really early to like run before he works, so I knew he'd be up at like 6:30. So I sent him a message being like, avoid all social media before you watch The Mandalorian. And he replied back like, unfortunately one thing was spoiled for me already, but I'm going to go watch it during my lunch break. And then during his lunch break he texted me a message of just like a bunch of crying face emojis. So it very deeply affected people in a good way, and this show is just it's doing what the new movies failed to do, which is it's uniting the Star Wars fandom again.
It really is, and I'm trying to think back, and it's crazy. Like, it is a literal 5-year span, because this episode came out on the actual 5-year anniversary of when Force Awakens was released, December 18th, 2015, down to the very Friday that it came out. This episode was released as well, and it's such a crazy 5-year journey. And, you know, the movies are to blame, and the fan base is to blame a little bit. And I don't mean you and me, but, you know, it's a lot like wrestling where people are just overly negative, and sometimes rightfully so with some of the stuff the Star Wars movies have produced over the years. I completely get it. But it's just so fucking toxic. Like, oh, you love this movie, you must hate Star Wars, and et cetera, et cetera. But was there... Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, I'm just agreeing with you.
Was there this much toxicity coming out of the 7th movie, out of Force Awakens? Because I feel like a lot of people were just excited that we finally had Star Wars content, at least on a major platform for the first time in so long.
The Force Awakens was probably the best received of the sequel trilogy. And I do remember a few things people were complaining about. Some people thought, oh, Rey's a Mary Sue. She's way too skilled at all these things right away,
Yes.
which was a dumb argument.
Yeah.
That was a dumb argument for so many reasons, but we don't need to get into that. But I think the other thing that some people were complaining about was just Kylo Ren not being as a cool villain, and like, he got better. I will say that Kylo Ren was the one element of those movies that I think improved with each movie. Actually,
he did.
And the first movie, he's like a whiny little brat kind of, but if you think about it, that's very in line. Like, Anakin was a whiny little brat too. And it's one of those things where I think, and this is similar with pro wrestling too, both these things have been around for decades. And when you have something that's been around for multiple generations, you end up with different groups of people who fell in love with it for completely different reasons. And then they want those reasons to be the thing that keeps the franchise moving forward. And if they go in any other direction, it disappoints them. So, like, the new Star Trek movies are a great example of that. Old Star Trek fans don't really care for the new Star Trek movies. They're too flashy. The technology looks way more advanced than it did back then, and that doesn't make any sense. Or they change the way the Klingons look, and that's stupid. Like, but those movies also brought in an entire new generation of Star Trek fans. So it's just a risky venture when you take any franchise as beloved as Star Wars or Star Trek or Marvel or whatever we're talking about, and to try and make it for a new generation, because you're gonna end up upsetting some people if you change any element of anything. So I think with Star Wars, it's probably one of the biggest divides, because the new movies were so uneven in tone from movie to movie. Like, I like things about every single Star Wars movie, in my opinion, is watchable. Even the one with Jar Jar Binks, like, I can throw it on in the background, and when a big CGI fight scene happens, I can look up and be entertained for a few minutes. But it's such a waste of time to me for people to get that upset about something. Like, I get it. You love it and you want it to be something, and it lets you down, but it's just a piece of media. Like, do not let it own your life like that, because you're going to end up constantly disappointed and angry and bitter.
Yeah, well, not only that, I mean, I completely agree with that, but what I think is even worse is when they go after the people that actually genuinely enjoy this stuff. And these people, I'm not even talking about the people that say everything is perfect, like everything they did was great, but like the people who just say, oh, I like that movie. And then the other people are like, well, I didn't like that movie, so you shouldn't like that movie either. I mean, it was complete shit. I mean, it goes with everything, but specifically Star Wars. I mean, The Last Jedi was just on another level. It's like, oh, I didn't like that movie, so you shouldn't like it either because it was complete shit. It's like, oh, I don't know, I just enjoyed it for what it was. You know what I mean? So I'm glad we're seemingly past that with The Mandalorian, because I think a lot of people agree this is one of, if not the greatest piece. I mean, I don't know, because that's including the original trilogy, so I don't want to say it's the greatest thing they've ever done, but consistently, it's very hard to pick out a lot of flaws from these shows.
I mean, the production is top-notch. It looks like a movie, and it's a TV show. I mean, you get that sometimes. Like, Lost was very cinematic as well. That you easily could have taken any 2 or 3 episodes of that show, stitched them together, and put it in a theater, and it would have looked good. But this show's on a different level. Like, The Mandalorian has, in my opinion, equal production value to some of the new Star Wars movies. It might not be as big and epic. We might not be seeing 1,000 ships fighting in the sky at once, but everything we see looks good. Every little detail looks great. And there's just so many things about this show that can be praised. Like, the dialogue is great. The acting is great. The casting is great. The production value, the set design. Like, they get so many little details right. And if somebody put a gun to my head and said, complain about something from The Mandalorian, it would take me a minute to come up with something that I genuinely have a complaint on, because I think when this show started, I was so weary of it, because I was like, oh, they're going to try and do a Mandalorian character that's brand new. Like, they should have just gone with somebody who's existing, like Bo-Katan or whatever. But as soon as that first opening bar fight happened in that first episode, I'm like, I fucking love this show. Like,
I'm sold.
Just the space western motif. Like, I've loved that since I was a kid. There's Star Wars to me isn't as much space western as a lot of people like to say it is. Like Firefly. Have you ever seen Firefly?
I have, yes. My friend and it's a good show.
That's like a literal space western. They actually herd cattle in one episode, for Christ's sake. But when I was a kid, there was a bunch of cartoons. I think some of them even were from Japan originally. There's like the Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers and Brave Star, and they were like literally cowboys in space. Mm-hmm. And I loved them all. I think my lunchbox in elementary school was actually Galaxy Rangers. Now I think
that's cool.
Because I was looking on eBay for one like a year or two ago. Like, I wonder if these things are expensive. And no, like a brand new one's like $20. I almost bought it.
That's great.
But yeah, like just everything about this show, from the space western motif and all the music. Like, the music in this show is incredible.
It's great.
I don't have a single complaint. I'm extremely happy with everything, and it's gotten me excited for all of the shows, even the ones where I was like, oh, I don't even know what this show is going to be about. Like the Rangers of the New Republic, they still haven't given us like any detail on that at all.
Yeah, not at all.
I personally hope that it focuses on some of the characters we've already met, but I wouldn't mind it if they brought in some more new characters at this point, because they've done so well with that.
Yeah. That's why I was really happy they didn't kill off Mando, because they've done such a good job of building him up and making him such a marketable, likable character, especially without his mask off, and Pedro Pascal specifically in the role. I would have been very upset if they killed him off here and went with someone else, or I like Bo-Katan and Boba Fett, but I think to kill him off would have been incredibly dumb. So they've done such a good job, more so than I think. Is it safe to say that Mandalorian has done a better job than any other piece of Star Wars media of introducing new characters that are actually likable? Because I feel like in every trilogy, every show, there's at least one or two characters that are like either really fucking annoying or just poorly written. And I feel like The Mandalorian doesn't really have that at all.
No. I agree with you. I can't think of a single character that's annoyed me. Like, even the frog lady didn't annoy me.
I mean, it was pointless, but, like, she didn't annoy me, yeah.
In fact, if anything, I thought that they did a really great job creating a character like that wasn't annoying. And the scene where she saves Baby Yoda by shooting the spider on his head, it's like, how do you not immediately like her then?
Yeah.
It's like, she just saved the little guy that she might, for all we know, is well aware that he's been eating her eggs this whole time. Like,
exactly.
We don't know. Like, did she count them before she left? Because she definitely would have found the count to be off when she went in the little hot tub.
Yeah.
But it's done an amazing job, like, meshing the old characters with the new characters and making it feel like they've been around each other for a long time to begin with.
Definitely, yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing who more they'll bring back and introduce specifically in the next season, which there are bound to be many more characters, because as great of a cast of characters as they have right now, you know they're going to either attempt to bring more back or introduce new ones in the next season, which I'm excited for. And these motherfuckers got me, because this show just ended yesterday. We're a week away from Christmas, and now all I can think about coming off that show is how bad I want a Baby Yoda in some form or fashion, whether it be in a plush or some of the more realistic ones are like $80, which are a little ridiculous, but like a typical Walmart one is like $30, and now that's all I want for Christmas is anything Baby Yoda Mandalorian themed, because I enjoyed this season so much.
Something.
What'd you say?
I might just get a Funko Pop.
Yeah, well, they have a lot of Funko Pops. So they have like the regular sized ones, but I also saw one in several different stores One that was huge, like I don't know, maybe it was like $100, I think, but like a giant Baby Yoda Funko Pop. And it was just massive. And I'm like, well, that's awesome, but I have no idea where to put that thing because it's so fucking big. But yeah, there's a lot of Baby Yoda merchandise out there.
I saw one where I think it was a 2-pack where one was Mando and then the other one was Baby Yoda in the little floating pram.
That's cool.
And I want to say it was like $30 for the 2-pack or something. I don't remember, but
yeah, it probably is.
But like, I was shopping for everybody else, on Black Friday and Cyber Monday and stuff like that. So I never ended up looking for anything that I might want, which is like every year on Christmas, I usually buy something that's on a big sale for myself too. Just like I might as well. And I didn't do that this year just because I didn't think of it. But it's crazy how much, like, if you just look up Mandalorian on Amazon, like the amount of stuff they've already slapped everything on is crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts.
100 coffee mugs.
Yep.
Alone.
Yeah, a lot of coffee mugs. I've seen a lot of Baby Yoda and Mandalorian socks, a lot of posters, shirts, obviously. The Disney store, I was at the mall a couple of weeks ago, and the Disney store is just chock full of that stuff. It's crazy. Because, the cool thing about Mandalorian is that it appeals to so many different audiences. Like, we're talking about it right now, but like older people can enjoy the show because they were around for the original trilogy and love that stuff, or kids love Baby Yoda and they just love the Mandalorian is such, Mando himself is such a marketable character because kids are going to want to play with action figures that look like him or Boba Fett, especially with the guns and stuff too. It's just so marketable, and Star Wars has always been that way, but Mandalorian specifically, it's just something for everyone to enjoy. And anyone who asks me, oh, what's the show about? Should I watch it? Even if I'm not a big Star Wars fan, I always say yes because it's that good of a show. And I feel like this is the first piece of Star Wars media where I've had enough people ask me, oh, what's this whole show about? Because I feel like even when the new movies came out, people were like, oh, it's a Star Wars movie. Cool. Maybe aside from the 7th one, aside from Force Awakens, because that was the first movie in a long time to have come out. But I feel like Mandalorian has got people buzzing around Star Wars again, and not just, fans like ourselves, but even mainstream media and just casual viewers at best have been talking about Mandalorian, something Star Wars related for the first time in many, many years.
Yeah, it's incredible what this show is. I mean, this show is literally the reason Disney Plus is successful.
It is, yeah, definitely.
I got to tell you this before we stop recording. I just looked up Mandalorian Funko on Amazon, and they have one of Baby Yoda with the canister of eggs.
Oh, that's amazing. How can you not get that?
I mean, there's one, like, the blue guy that he arrests in the first episode that came back this season? There's a Funko of that guy.
What'd you say?
There's a Funko of him.
Just him?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I did not know that. That's so funny. He appears in an episode or two and they just have a Funko for like literally every minute character. They have Funko Pops of everything, but for some reason that doesn't surprise me. That's cool though.
But they have a Funko for like every one of the Mandalorian soldiers we saw in that first season finale. Like all of them had like kind of unique armor. Oh, by the way, I just read something super interesting. So remember in season 1 when he goes down to the armorer and that other Mandalorian comes in and they almost get into a fight, but then the armorer is like, stop it. This is blah, blah, blah. This is the way. And they're like, okay, fine.
Yeah. Early on in the first season. Yeah.
So apparently that guy in the credits did have a name, and his last name was Vizsla, which is very interesting because in the Rebels cartoon, so the Dark Saber was created by the first Mandalorian who ever became a Jedi. Mm-hmm. And his name was something Vizsla. Anyway, it was like 1,000 years ago. And then in the Clone Wars cartoon, his descendant Pre-Vizsla was the leader of Mandalore. He had the Dark Saber. Darth Maul challenges him for leadership and kills him and takes over Mandalore, and only Bo-Katan and a small group of rebels fight against him. Mm-hmm. Eventually, Maul is defeated, and the Dark Saber goes to her, whatever. So that guy being a Vizsla is interesting because it means that that little whatever, what was it, Children of the Watch?
Yeah.
That little cult or whatever must have developed after the Clone Wars, because that Vizsla guy would have still been part of the main Mandalorian society as a child at that point.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
So I'm wondering if that character, because I think he's the character who also, like, flies next to Mando's ship in the finale, and Mando's like, I gotta get one of those jetpacks.
Yeah, so I was wondering if they were going to bring him back at some point.
I hope at some point Mando tracks down his former associates that have gone into hiding somewhere else and tries to like season 3 should be about reuniting the Mandalorian people.
I think it will be with the emphasis on the Mandalorian stuff on this episode. I think it will be, definitely.
Yeah, like reuniting the people and like putting Bo-Katan back in leadership, or maybe the plan is for Din to become the new leader. Maybe Bo will relent and be like, you know, you're more cool-headed than I am or something, because Bo-Katan is a very straightforward character in the cartoon. Like, they've done a great job making her just like she was in the cartoons, which is like, she's kind of brutal in a way where, like, she doesn't necessarily do anything bad, but she understands that there's going to be casualties and is willing to make those sacrifices to get something. So it's going to be, I don't know. Season 3 has me excited because there's so many different things they could do with it, and any of them would be good.
Yeah, I'm super pumped. 2 final questions for you as far as that's concerned. You just brought it up right there as far as what they might do for the 3rd season. Moff Gideon's probably going to remain the big bad here, right? He didn't die. He actually tried to kill himself, but, you know, Bo-Katan stopped him before he could. You got to assume he's going to break out at some point and continue to be the big villain of the show, right?
I mean, I hope so, just because Giancarlo Esposito is so entertaining to watch as a bad guy. I mean, did you watch Breaking Bad?
I did not watch Breaking Bad. I know he's in the show, and I also know he's in The Boys, too, which I also have yet to watch.
I haven't watched The Boys too much either, but I think maybe he was not very major in that show.
No, I don't think he was. I did a quick recap of the show. I kind of know what happens for the most part. He wasn't a major character. He's kind of like a side character, but I think he's still a bad guy. I guess spoiler alert. I think so.
The only thing I've ever seen him not be a bad guy in is Community.
Oh, he was in Community too?
Yeah, like 2 or 3 episodes. He plays Pierce's half-brother.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. Chevy Chase's half-brother. Yeah.
Chevy Chase is in Community too?
Yeah, he's like one of the main cast members for the first few seasons.
I did not know that. I've never really seen Community, but that's interesting.
Dude, Community is one of my favorite shows of all time. Like, that show's incredible, and every actor from that show, except Chevy Chase, has gone on to have an amazing career. Like Ken Jeong, Joel McHale, Allison Brie, Donald Glover, like, they're all doing big things. And I heard a rumor that they're doing something for Lando, like a movie or a TV show, right? Did you hear that?
Didn't they announce a show for him as part of the Disney Investor Day thing? I thought they did, because didn't they confirm, like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but I thought it was a show or something.
Like, I wasn't sure if it was a show or a movie, but I would love it if it was one of those shows that, like, was half Billy D. Williams playing it, half Donald Glover playing him in the past. Like, 2 adventures per episode, one in the past, one in the present. And they've done other shows like that, and they can be done well.
I would love that, especially as long as Billy D. Williams is still around. Absolutely.
Did they announce if it's about, like, old Billy D. Williams Lando or young Donald Glover Lando? I don't remember if they said anything.
They didn't. And I feel like if it was just a Donald Glover show, then they would say that. So, not saying that they'll do exactly what you said, but I think it'd be cool if they did. And I feel like Billy D. Williams has got to be part of it. I mean, the guy's still around. I mean, I'm not sure how old he is, but while he's around, I mean, that's why I was so disappointed they never brought him back in the earlier movies. Obviously, he came back in Rise of Skywalker, but why the fuck wasn't he in the other 2 movies? I mean, while he's around, why not just use the guy? Like, it's just weird, but I think he'll be a part of it in some form or fashion.
It might have been a situation where they didn't want to overload each movie with old characters.
Yeah.
the first movie was sort of the Han Solo stuff. The second movie was the Luke stuff. The third movie was supposed to be more Carrie Fisher stuff, but they could only work with what they had.
Yeah.
I really hope that they don't rely too much on this de-aging stuff, though. Like, as soon as I saw Luke, I was excited, but like a few seconds later, the thought that ran through my head was, oh no, are we going to see de-aged Leia and de-aged Lando and Han and all these other characters? Like, because they're all still running around during the time of The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I don't think they will, because I feel like we were saying earlier, I feel like they won't overexpose those characters. Like, we got the big finale here, they saved it for a big moment at the end of the episode, and to have that be it. Like, I feel like they won't, maybe Han, but I don't think they'll do Leia. Like, we kind of got that at the end of Rogue One. I don't see them doing that again, I don't think.
The only thing I would ever want them to do is it would just be cool if you saw the Millennium Falcon fly by in the background.
That would be cool, yeah. That would be a lot of fun.
I don't need every character to come back, and I'm so glad that Luke's thing was just like a glorified cameo at the end, because if he had been in the whole episode, that mouth CGI would have ruined the whole show.
Yeah, that would have been really annoying.
Just that did take me out of it a little bit, because it's like, come on, guys, you've done this well a few times. Why do you keep fucking it up with Star Wars specifically?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think they will. I think they'll just leave it at that. But we'll see. I feel like they'll do right by it, even though it didn't look great with Luke in this episode. I feel like if they do too much of it, then it's going to become a problem. But again, like I said, I have enough faith in Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni to do right by the show, and as far as the de-aging stuff is concerned. Speaking of Jon Favreau, my last question for you. You mentioned like he was tweeting about something recently. He doesn't tweet too often. So I was on his Twitter the other day, I think actually last night after the episode aired, because I was curious if he had said anything about it. He hasn't tweeted really a lot at all this year, and I saw one of the recent tweets was actually from last December, after the first season ended, announcing the second season for November of 2020, which is when it came out. And with the tweet, he attached the picture of, what are like Jabba's palace, like the main bodyguards, or I don't know if that's the right word, but you know what I'm talking about, like the big green guys, what they're called.
I
don't remember. I would know if you said it. I just don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, actually, there's a Funko for one on this page. They're called a Gamorrean fighter, is what it's called. Yeah.
Gamorrean fighter. I thought there was, maybe they're called Gamorrean. I don't know. Maybe I'm just mixing up with Gamora from Marvel, but he attached the picture.
Funny. It almost rhymes, and they're both green aliens. That is kind of funny.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I didn't really make that reference. I didn't really make that connection. That's funny. He attached the picture of a Gamorrean fighter action figure in the tweet announcing the second season, which I looked at the replies and no one was saying anything about that. I'm like, why would he do that? But do you think he had an idea even a year ago of doing that post-credit scene that we saw on this show? Because it seems so random, because I don't think we saw... Or wait, maybe... Actually, you know what? We had Gamorrean fighters in the first episode of the season.
Yeah, the Underground Fight Club. I was going to say that might have been more a reference to that.
Yeah, it probably was. Never mind, because that was like the first thing that we saw in the first episode, so that's probably what it was.
Filming season 2 while season 1 was happening, and I think they might already be filming season 3 or writing it or something.
Probably writing it, because they only just announced it recently.
Yeah, well, that doesn't mean it hasn't been confirmed in the background for a while. This is Disney we're talking about,
yeah,
though.
That's true. I know Sasha was filming her role for this show, in January or something. She was off of SmackDown for like a month or so. Or at least she didn't wrestle.
That one line where she's like, I didn't know sidekicks could talk, and Boba Fett responds with a similar to, that's the pot calling the kettle black.
I noticed that. Yeah. Funny. That was funny. I forgot what he said exactly, but I'm like, that's like their version of the pot calling the kettle black. And like, I know they say like, instead of like, what the fuck, they say like Den Farak or something like that. We've mentioned that before. But like their lingo, like it's, I don't know, they're getting more clever with it, so I think it's funny. But yeah, no, that's it. We spent an hour talking about this episode, and rightfully so, because it was fucking great. Yeah. Very, very fun stuff.
There's one thing that this show could potentially do that no other Star Wars thing I think, could do, which is make a Gungan a cool character.
Maybe. I know Bill Burr's character referenced not Jar Jar specifically.
Yeah, he thought, he's like, is he a Gungan under that mask?
Yeah, and then he's like Misa something. He made like he did like an impression of a Gungan. So that is the true test. As much faith as they have in the showrunners and the show itself, the real test with them would be them making a Gungan. Do you think we could ever see a Jar Jar return? I mean, he's probably dead by this point, right?
Well, I don't know if this is still considered canon, but Jar Jar is in one of the books, and he's like, at this point, this is many years after all the Fall of the Empire stuff, and he's like a homeless street performer that people like just laugh at and throw coins at.
Mm-hmm.
He's like kind of a sad character, and whoever the main character of the book is, like, talks to him for a minute, and it's very clearly Jar Jar. He just doesn't call himself Jar Jar.
Yeah.
So they sort of established that, like, he went into exile because he was so ashamed of the role he played in the downfall of everything. But I don't want them to bring back Jar Jar necessarily. I just think it would be cool if they were like, oh, here's a Gungan, but guess what? They don't all talk like Jar Jar, so this one's not offensive.
Yeah, they kind of fixed that stereotype from the first movie. I would love. I don't want them to right every wrong from every movie, but that would be nice if they kind of explained, hey, we're not all just annoying characters, and we don't all speak like this, so, and we're not all like racist stereotypes. That would be impressive.
You know, I did see one thing that was really funny, which was somebody was like, well, they need a new baby Yoda for the season 3. What about a baby Ewok?
Maybe.
Ewoks are basically just big teddy bears.
Yeah, those sold, I'm sure, a lot of fucking stuffed animals back in the day.
Not popular back then. People hated the Ewoks. Actually, yeah, some people still do. Like, a lot of people love Return of the Jedi, but a lot of people think that it went way too far in the kiddie direction, like trying to appeal to, you know, the toy sales. And because let's face it, episode 5 is much darker than episode 4 and 6.
Definitely.
And not necessarily in like a super adult, I won't let my kids watch it way, but it's a mature story. And then in the third one, you have Leia given Wicket little cinnamon sticks or whatever the hell those things were supposed to be, and like you have the Ewoks dancing around, but also they imply that the Ewoks were going to eat them. So it's not like they're just fuzzy little funny creatures. They're like meat eating warriors.
Yeah.
But yeah, like a baby Ewok, that would sell through the roof.
Definitely. We'll see. They could. You never know. They can bring back the Ewoks. We saw them, a very, quick glimpse of them in episode 9 at the very end there when they were celebrating on Endor. So you never know.
Yeah,
they can bring back the Ewoks. I don't know if I would be opposed to that. Again, I have enough faith that they'll make it work. So if they really want to continue the marketability of the show.
I didn't hate the Ewoks. I mean, I was a kid when I first saw Star Wars, so
yeah,
I didn't hate the Ewoks. I didn't love them. I never had an Ewok plushie or anything, but I understand why some people basically were like, oh, the Gungans are the new Ewoks.
Was it the screaming that people didn't like? What was it about them specifically that people didn't like?
Just that they were like clearly designed to appeal to the child audience.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I guess if anything, like, well, I mean, I feel like the newer movies had that, but some of the things that they brought in for those movies I didn't hate. I forgot what they were called, but like the duckling things from like the 8th movie from Return of the Jedi. God, I don't.
Porgs?
Yeah, the porgs, yeah, or purgs, or whatever they're called.
I feel like the porgs didn't really piss people off because they were used in a very limited way.
Yeah, I'm surprised those didn't take off as much as they did, like more than they did. I thought they would be like, oh man, this big marketing thing, but they really weren't. Like, they were, big after the movie came out, but
there was some toys. There's like, you can buy this big ass Lego thing that you can build up to be a full size porg. It's like a couple $100, but
yeah, Legos are fucking expensive.
Yeah, that was one of those weird things that like I don't think anybody really had a visceral reaction like, "Oh, this is ruining Star Wars." They were like, "Oh, those are kind of cute."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They didn't overuse them, so there was no reason to be mad.
Yeah, that thing there was. There's plenty more about that movie that people were complaining about, as opposed to the Porgs. That was like the most toxicity I've ever seen from the Star Wars fan base. So thankfully those days are behind us. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Now that the Mandalorian is here and season 2 is in the books, because this was a great episode. I can't stress enough how people should absolutely go out of their way to watch the show. I would start from the beginning. I think you'll enjoy it more if you do. But the second season specifically has been absolutely tremendous. But Chris, this has been awesome. I'm so glad that we've been, spending the last 8 weeks breaking down Mandalorian. This has been so much fun, and I'm glad we were able to do this.
Oh yeah, this show is one of the few bright spots of 2020.
Absolutely, and it's such a great way to close out what has been such a tumultuous, to say the least, 2020. So hopefully 2021 has a lot more in store. And as we've previously established, there's a lot to look forward to. Not only the book of Boba Fett coming out in December of next year, whether it be a show or the third season or whatever it might be. Again, we got the winter, the WandaVision trailer, the show itself coming out in January. Falcon and Winter Soldier in March. May, I believe, is the What If show. May is actually the Loki show. And then after that is the What If show, I think, in the summer. And there might even be more than I'm not thinking of. I think maybe Hawkeye late next year. I don't know. But that's at least 4 shows already.
Didn't they announce the Eternals for some time next year, too?
Yeah, well, I was thinking of just the shows itself, but the Eternals in November and Black Widow in May, I think, is what they bumped. Or no, April. I think it's April. Either one. It's supposed to come out in the next couple months. I mean, that's, again, assuming it doesn't get delayed again. The shows aren't being delayed, I don't think. I think a lot of that shit is already in the can. The movies are to be determined, depending on what happens with theaters and whatever. But, again...
Well, then did you mention the Obi-Wan show?
And the Obi-Wan show, is that coming out next year, or is that 2022?
I would assume,
I don't remember.
I would assume it's next year, because they're, filming it now.
Yeah, there have been a lot of reports about it being filmed, even though they never confirmed it until the Disney Investor Day, so hopefully, I'm probably looking forward more to that than any of the other stuff, to be honest, and all the other stuff is exciting too, so I'm very excited to see what they'll do with it.
Yeah, Hayden Christensen returning as Darth Vader is an interesting choice.
Very interesting, and I know we broke it down last time.
Is he going to be taking the mask off once in a while, or are they going to be having him somehow do the James Earl Jones voice? Because that would just be weird.
Yeah, he'll definitely be taking off the mask, just because, they'll definitely have, again, a lot like we just said with Billy D. Williams and Lando. As long as James Earl Jones is around, which we have no idea how much longer, I don't know how old he is. I know he's up there, but use the guy, which they have. They've used him for other stuff in the last couple of years. Use James Earl Jones for the voice of Darth Vader, and then when he takes off the mask, which I'm not sure how often that's going to be, use Hayden Christensen. So I don't know if it's going to be in the Bacta tank or whatever you call it. I have no fucking clue, but I don't think they would bring him back.
It could be flashbacks too.
Exactly, it could be that.
They might be bringing him in and then de-aging him a little bit and having some flashbacks from the time of the Clone Wars to better establish Obi-Wan and Darth Vader's relationship, which would be weird because the Clone Wars cartoon already filled in all those gaps, but
yeah,
I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens, because Hayden Christensen is a much better actor now than he was back then, and if they have good writers, then he won't have to deal with horrible dialogue about sand.
Yeah, exactly. I think the Obi-Wan show is going to be a lot like Mandalorian, where it's like, man, I don't know. I'm looking forward to all the shows they announce, Ahsoka Tano, stuff like that. But I don't know. Obi-Wan just gives me the Mandalorian vibes in terms of characters they're bringing back and doing justice by.
It just occurred to me, I didn't even think about this. The Obi-Wan show is obviously going to be taking place on Tatooine. That might have something to do with the whole Boba Fett thing, since now he's on Tatooine and Jabba's palace kind of... Well, I think Jabba's palace is on Tatooine.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So
that would be awesome if those two had a reunion.
That would be fucking sick. I think they will. Like you said, I think there's going to be a lot of...
Obi-Wan and Boba Fett only really saw each other in the prequel series, now I think about it.
Yeah, because Obi-Wan died in episode 4, and Boba Fett wasn't introduced until episode 5, so... Pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, Boba Fett obviously would want to kill Mace Windu the second he saw him, but
yeah.
I don't know how he would react to Obi-Wan, because, like, he saw him as a kid.
Yeah, I don't think he would be too mad at him. I mean, also, he wasn't the one who killed his father, so I don't know. Maybe they'll form an alliance or something.
He might hate all Jedi, who knows?
Yeah, maybe. Depending on what they do. I would expect them to maybe cross paths at some point. Throw in Mace Windu, which they could still do. I feel like there's so much buzz around that...
Well, Samuel Jackson's campaigning for it, practically.
Is he? He actually wants to do it?
Yeah, he tweeted something like, "We all know Jedis can survive a long fall," and blah, blah, blah. Like,
interesting. I didn't know that.
I think he even said, like, "I know Mace Windu's out there doing something," so it would be cool if they established that he was the one who saved Grogu. And
it'd be amazing.
I'd love to see him brought back in some capacity, even if it was just for one episode of one of these shows.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Don't get my hopes up now, because now I'm very excited for season 3. We're not getting for at least a year now. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, but yeah, it's a very exciting time to be a Star Wars fan. Again.
Very exciting time, absolutely, to say the least. And Christmas is coming up, so again, I got to go start binging in my Star Wars merchandise as we speak right now. But Chris, thanks again. This has been awesome. Again, I know we timed this perfectly with the end of the MCU Rewatch review series that we just got done doing for the majority of 2020. So this is an amazing way to close out the year. But we're not done yet. You mentioned it earlier. We got about 6 days until Christmas as we speak right now. At some point before then. Maybe in the next couple of days, early next week. We'll figure it out. Got to break down the holiday special. We'll welcome your friend on Billy, depending on his availability as well. Definitely got to do that. I think that'd be a great way to close out 2020 on the whole.
We'll try and post it on Christmas, hopefully.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. So probably in the next couple days or something, we can get that done. And I haven't seen it, so I'm going to be a first-time viewer of the Star Wars Holiday Special, and that'll be
interesting ride.
Hey, the whole 2020 has been an interesting ride, so it's a very fitting way to close out the year. But thanks again, Chris. This has been awesome. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks, man.